Hey, everybody. This is Rob Cubby Colby. I am so excited for Joe Kelley and his YouTube presentation of Musicians Reveal. Stay tuned. It just gets better and better.
Welcome to Musicians Reveal. I'm Joe Kelley, and today I'm really thrilled because we are going to be joined by a world-class front-of-house music engineer, concert studio, monitors. He has toured and recorded with the likes of Prince and the Minneapolis Sound Musicians, also Genesis and Phil Collins, The Cure, Shania Twain, and many, many more. We catch him on a little break in his action out of Minnesota. Rob Cubby Colby. How you doing, Rob?
Good, Joe. Thanks for having me, man. Great to be.
Yes. First off, we'll get it out of the way. First, I'll tell you, I've seen your name so many times when I was growing up. Cubby on Prince's credits and stuff like that. I'm like, where's that coming from? So I knew about your name from way back, way back. Let the audience know the origin of the nickname Cubby.
Oh, that was on a Kansas tour. The band had gone to Disney World. I think we were in Orlando at the time. And for some reason or another, the drummer, Phil Ehart, came back into rehearsals, gave me the Mickey Mouse ears that they originally had been given and the key to Disney World that day. And he just said, from this point on, your nickname is Cubby. And it just stuck. So I'm really not that familiar with all of that. That goes way back then, but
Yeah.
It just happened to stick. And so I've just had to, affectionately known as Cubby for a long time with my friends and colleagues. So,
Yeah.
But amongst my family, I'm still just Rob.
That's it. Yeah, that's right. They throw all that. You're just Rob.
Yeah.
Growing up you grew up in Minnesota. What was your first attraction to music?
Probably in the early 60s, the British invasion of music. I think we all kind of learned how to sing along to the Beatles and to AM radio. My two older sisters and I were quite vocal, and we really enjoyed singing a lot together. So that was kind of the start of it. And then my friends at the time, we started a little miming band. I actually really did sing, but they mimed. And then eventually that grew into a real band. And we would, years later, when we were in our high school dates, we actually had a band, and on weekends, we made, $50 to $100 each doing gigs. So that's kind of where that started. And then later into that, just before graduating from high school, we were playing the Mankato Ballroom, and I realized when I was standing on stage that I'd much rather be out there mixing sound than I would be up there. Each one of the band members, we all had a little part to play. Had the sound part. The guitar player, we rehearsed at his house. The drummer took care of our little lighting system, and the bass player, his dad had the van. So one of us contributed a little way in order to make this all happen. And our parents actually kind of never discouraged us from doing it, or never discouraged me from doing it, because it was an interest outside of just our normal sports and school all the time. So it just was kind of the stepping stone. And then I played trumpet, or cornet rather, all through grade school and high school. So I learned music, learned how to read music, and that, with my singing with my two older sisters, was really probably the part that was kind of fascinating and got me into listening more. The airwaves were full of all the music, and we just loved listening to it in the car with our vacations or whenever we were at home. And I just came across my sister's record collection the other day that I have inherited here.
Oh, okay.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah, yeah. I've got the huge. I inherited a record collection from my mom's husband. I was going through. I was like, wow, there's some gems in here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
yeah. So you realized, I take it, like you weren't going to make it to the NBA as a musician, but you wanted to get into another passion, sound and engineering. And did you go to study that initially right away, or did you gravitate it hands-on
No,
approach?
no, I worked for local bands around the Minneapolis area. And
Mhm.
then I did leave and go off with a group to the East Coast. And when they discovered that I could sing, and they actually wanted me to be the front of house mixer and sing somehow, set it all up, and then get up on stage. And I said no to that.
Uh-huh.
And all along, um, I knew of that the vocational school in Mankato electronics program might be a really good fit for me. And my dad actually brought it up. So I decided at the last minute that I would go back to Mankato and take the basic electronics course, which was a 2-year program. Best thing I ever did. And learned electronics, had a great instructor. Um, I'll never forget him, Merlin Plotz. And throughout the course, I always applied everything I was learning there about electronics and the mathematics to how audio would work. And eventually, I I built my own console. I started with a crossover, and then I ended up building my own console where I did all the prototype work on those boards, and built a 5-stage EQ, effect sends, the thing that looks kind of like operation table where there's all the components are just stuck into this little uh, block of that you can interface all the capacitors and resistors and faders. So I built that along with a Fortran program that gave me the best results, plus and minus 5% is what I was going for, kind of more or
Mhm.
less a military grade. And once I got one input to work with the proper ICs at that time, which were LM 301s and 381s, that the later being the stereo op amp, I built a channel. And then I ended up building and etching all my own circuit boards. I did all the land work there in my classroom. Did the circuit board, the copper circuit board, drilled all the holes, put all the components in, and built each strip was 2 channels, and ended up with 20 inputs and 4 outputs. And that was my project, and it actually ended
Wow.
up working very, very well. And by that time now, I had already built my own speaker cabinets and crossover when I was in high school. So now
Mhm.
I had a complete PA and made my own multi-core snake, obviously using Belting cable, but soldering, you know, making mic panels, splitter boxes. At that time, we didn't call them splitter boxes, but just a way to interface the stage mics and get it out to the my console I had built, and then I ran monitors from that console as well. Um, so that's really the meat and potatoes of my early days in getting a very, very good education in electronics, which has been the most valuable thing probably I did at that early point in my career.
And your career started off really big. I don't know the jump from there. Kansas and Hart, right? They were the
Yeah,
yeah.
I was working for local bands in Minneapolis
Mhm.
that would go through, Wisconsin into Illinois and play these concert clubs.
Okay.
And I met a fella in Chicago, Harry Witz, who had DB Sound at that time. and for a couple of years, he just said, "Hey, why don't you come work for me?" And I really didn't have any desire to leave this area. And so I eventually, next time I went through there, I thought, you know what, I'll go over and visit the shop and see what it's like. And yeah, once I saw all the gear and the larger consoles, and I thought to myself, yeah, this could be a great fit for me. And that's what I did. And through that, then we got the Kansas account, or they had already had the Kansas account. So that was the first tour I went out on. And from there, it went into Heart. And from Heart, it went to Prince, and so on and so forth.
With Hart in Kansas, were you doing front of house or was it monitor or other
No,
jobs?
I was really, well, in the very beginning, I was first one in, last one out. I did everything that nobody
Wow.
else wanted to do.
Okay.
You know, all the feeder cable, flew the PA, loved it. Pinned the stage, did everything, didn't mix. And then on the Kansas tour, they one of the monitor engineer had to go home. So they just came to me and said, my at the time Harry was out there as the system engineer, and he just said, "Why don't you mix monitors tonight?" And I said, "Okay, I will." And because I was setting up that monitor console every day, I was getting to learn more and more about the big format analog desks at that time.
Mhm.
So I thought, why not? Let's give it a shot. So he was gone. It was going to be me or nobody. So I just stepped in and loved it. Got along with the band. The band was just fantastic. That was the Point of No Return tour into the
Mhm.
Monolith tour, and then a couple tours after that. But um, once I got my feet wet, that was it for me. And so I was a monitor engineer on the Kansas tours, and then into the Heart tours, and that was just fabulous. Ann and Nancy were just fantastic. The band was so good. But when I kind of kid about it a little bit, I think for a lot of people, mixers, if you get good at one thing, like being a good fly person, they want you to do that. If you get to be a good monitor engineer, you get, I called it monitor prison, and you
Right.
got that monitor world all the time.
Right.
Um,
Right.
don't mind you, that was back in the days when things were a lot more difficult than they are today. The venues didn't sound as good, load-ins weren't as good, the days were much longer, the equipment was as good as it could be at that time, but it's nothing like it is now. So
So
it,
for a monitor engineer, where would you position yourself during the concert?
oh, just off side of the stage, always on
Okay.
stage, right, you know
Okay.
within reach of the band. The I could run on stage and grab microphones if the batteries were going bad on the original RF mics, which I usually had to change out a battery at least once a night during the show. It just they
Okay.
thing things it was all HME stuff back then, so things sure hadn't come out with a wireless microphone yet, or Bayer, or any of the other major manufacturers yet. But there was plenty of those microphones around. They were just cabled, and so it was a constant learning, a churning of learning all the time in order to just keep up with it. And I'd often would say is you just become so enamored with the work. The
Mhm.
time in the day never really became an issue. You just knew what you had to do. You had to get it in, had to get it up. You had a show to do, and no nonsense. Get it back in the truck, get as much sleep as you can, and eat well, and get on with the next one.
Right. It's like the traveling musical circus, especially with the tours you've done.
It certainly was, yeah.
Yeah. So you became acquainted with a hometown star, eventual star in Minneapolis, Prince. What was your first introduction with Prince?
Really funny. Quick story. I'm loading out Heart at the end of a tour, and I'll never forget. It was a stadium date, and it was
Okay.
all our PA, a full stadium PA monitor rig. I was the monitor engineer, And I was out there with my boss again, Harry Witz, and it was load out, so he was nowhere to be found because he's the
Okay.
boss. And no offense,
Right.
but there was a payphone right there at loadout, and I'm loading the truck, and the payphone was ringing and ringing and ringing. No word of a lie here. At the end,
Okay.
I closed the truck doors. I picked up the payphone, and I said, "Payphone," and it was my other boss trying to find Harry because during that time, Tom Marzullo, who then was the production manager for Prince,
Mhm.
somehow either Prince was at the show, and I had a very unique monitor system. Everything was flown in the air. So
Okay.
what I found out later is that he was there, saw that there was no monitors on the stage, probably liked that idea, everything up in the air, making the fact that his band would be fully seen, him being the statue that he is. You
Mhm.
know, if you put up a big wedge up there, half of Prince goes away. And
Mm.
back then, the wedges were big. So
Right.
um, my boss said, "Where's the monitor system in the truck?" I said, "The truck doors are closed. The PA's all in there." So the truck got sent to Minneapolis, and Bruce, my boss, said, um, "Well, you need to come back and then go meet the truck in Minneapolis." "Oh, great, because all my friends are in Minneapolis. I'd love to go to Minneapolis." "Who's it for?" "For Prince." "Prince of who?" "Prince of Monaco." "Prince." I didn't know. Honestly, I didn't know.
Okay.
And so I went to Chicago, did my laundry, flew to Minneapolis, met the truck, loaded in, and 11 o'clock that night, in walks this fella, and I'm on
Mhm.
the stage, and he walks up and gets behind the drum kit. We were already finished miking up everything. I'd seen all the inputs working, the Lynn drum machine, and he didn't introduce himself. I just stayed at the console, and he started hitting the kick drum button on the Lynn machine, and I saw it light up on my desk.
Mhm.
I PFL'd it, and I thought, oh, that's a great sounding kick drum. I think he wants that in the drum monitor. We did this whole thing starting at 11 o'clock. He puts a beat in, plays drums to the beat, gets up, walks over to Matt Fink's keyboards. Don't know anybody yet.
Mhm.
Starts playing Matt's keyboards with the drum beat playing. Starts singing into the microphone. Jumps off the front of the stage. Plays bass guitar. Unbelievable, with the drum beat still playing. Walks back over to Lisa's keyboards. Plays those. Jumps down. Puts on Dez's guitar. Starts playing that. I had side fills all the monitors up in the air. Wedges upstage behind the rig,
Mhm.
dialing everything in. Finally get done. He hits stop. It's 1:30 in the morning. It felt like
Wow.
it was 15 minutes. It was that much fun for him and for me. And I realized, like, wow, amazing. He asked me to come out to the middle of the stage. I did. And he said, the only thing I don't like is feedback. And I said, you and me both. And he put his hand out. He said, "I'll see you tomorrow, Cubby."
Wow. What an
That was it.
introduction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then next morning at 10 o'clock, the old band and him, and he was gracious enough. He introduced me to the band. He said, "This is Cubby. He's mixing monitors." And we had the whole PA there, and we just went right into rehearsals. And that's when I realized, wow, what an amazing artist with a band. And I just loved all of that early funk stuff that he was doing. I mean, that was my introduction to Controversy. But
Wow.
now I'm hearing all the early Dirty Minds and Prince music as well being introduced as the set for the tour. And that's when I
So
met
those
Roy and Tom and
right.
Marzullo and the rest of the backline people and lighting crew upstaging. Amazing, just amazing.
So those grainy black and white rehearsal videos, was that all at the warehouse? Were you doing all those rehearsals?
Yeah, those were at the Flying Cloud rehearsals. That was one of the rehearsal buildings, pre
Okay.
Park, and then we had another one that we moved into that he wanted to go into a bigger place, but then immediately realized the bigger place wasn't really that much better, because we had really transformed the Flying Cloud. All of the people there that worked, all of the incredibly great people that I worked with at that early time really were instrumental in, adding carpet, backdrop, a little set piece here and there. We just kind of built it from the ground up, and then eventually ended up in another little warehouse area that we had the basketball hoop outside, a little apartment upstairs with a phone, a little kitchen area where we could go eat and take breaks, during our lunch break.
Kind of a smaller version of Paisley Park, right?
Oh,
Much
yeah,
smaller.
yeah. Way. Yeah, that was probably the size of what C was that, at Paisley now.
Right.
Was at.
So yeah, the first tour we were talking a little bit, the Controversy tour, and you were jokingly said you had me beat by one tour that I went to see. You were actually working with all this great music. Tell us how you got involved with the Controversy tour and the early Triple Threat days.
Well, that was the story on the Controversy tour. Just meet the truck in Minneapolis, and I don't, I've never really asked the questions as to how DB got the call, but I do believe that he was there and contacted his production manager and liked the monitor system because it was flown in the air. So that was our invite to go to Minneapolis. And since the rest of the entire PA was on the truck, we loaded it all in and flew it, and as if we were always going to be a part of the tour. But there we were. And so that tour went and was extremely successful. And then I went back to continue to work for DB Sound. Okay. And then the next year, I'm out on another tour, and he starts 1999. But I remember getting asked if I'd be available through the PA company, but they all fielded all those calls and I wasn't available. So what ended up happening, it was right in the holidays. And I went to my parents' house for Christmas, I believe, or was Thanksgiving. It must have been Thanksgiving. And the phone rang on the wall and my dad answered. And it was, I learned later it was Steve Fagnoli asking my dad, is Cubby there? And my dad's like, Cubby? You mean, my son's here, Rob Colby. So he handed me the phone. The phone's on the wall with the long, coily cord.
Yeah, right.
And
right.
right. So, and Fagnoli said, can you come out here? Prince wants you back out here. Okay. Yeah, I can. The tour that I was on ended. And so the next day, I went to the airport in Minneapolis and flew back out the entire day, getting to the next gig, walked in, see Prince. He goes, are you ready? And I went, sure. And the house lights went off and I walked up at the monitor console and basically started a remix of what I remembered, what he wanted and what everybody wanted back from the Controversy tour. Slowly but surely got it there. I mean, within reason. And then, so that was the beginning of the 1999 tour. I think there were about 3 or 4 shows into that. And it was just phenomenal. Now things have stepped up for Prince, the band, all the wardrobe, everything has grown, exponentially, right, from Prince's success. So, but the gear that I was on was basically pretty much the same that I had used on Controversy, and pretty much the same kind of setup on stage. We hadn't gotten into the mammoth, Purple Rain rig yet. Right. So, so that was the end. I took that all the way, was on that all the way to the very end. That ended, went back to DB, where, living in Chicago at the time. And then I got the call. And I really wasn't part of any of the Purple Rain movie, but then they were planning the tour and I get the call, and they weren't going to use DB Sound, which was a heartbreak for me, having to go in and go, I'm going to take this tour, Harry, and go off and work with Prince. Because at that point, I knew it was a a really an amazing um, opportunity. And not only with Prince, but making those steps up into the other larger PA companies at the time, and feeling like this is where I belong. This is kind of what I belong to be doing, and so I met everybody in Minneapolis, and we started production rehearsals for Purple Rain.
And the rehearsals, where did they take place initially? And then where, I'm sure you did it in a big arena, right? Before you went out?
Yeah, we were at the Met Sports Center,
Okay.
which is now where the big Mall of America is. And then we would go back and forth between the Met Sports Center and what is now XL Center in St. Paul. But that room is completely different. That's now the XL Center. I think it's called it's a casino center now, but beautiful arena, one of the best in North America, actually. But the one prior to that was not that great. Met Sports Center was just a little smaller, maybe 9,000 seater. But we had the full Purple Rain stage with all the articulating stairs and the moving band risers and Roy Bennett's incredible lighting, and
Yeah.
a much bigger PA from Shoko, a Dallas-based company that had all the moving lights. So that was another major step. And now all the gear was completely different, more advanced, and needed more of it. And there was just a need for more areas of Prince to get around on that huge playground that he had, upstairs, downstairs, on top of the side fills, and all those bits, right? So I think we were there for 1 month and back and forth practicing that loadout with all that amount of gear and lighting, and trying to get it down to a point where it could be a 4 hour in and a 4 hour out and everything in between. So it all took place here before we took it out on the road.
There's that legendary story that he took a fall in the bathtub during the rehearsals. Did that
Yes.
really happen?
Yes, sir. Yeah. I
Wow.
was right there and ran, and he looked at me with these eyes wide open. Are you okay? And he didn't answer. He just looked at me and got up. And I imagined to myself, when tubs fly, is basically what the words came out of my mouth, as opposed to when doves cry. And he looked at me, smiled, and kept walking. So I knew he was okay.
Yeah.
This whole thing just kind of went back and forth as he rode the tub down and landed on the back of the stage. Everybody in shock. And I do remember an ambulance coming to the back door, but I don't think he ever got in it. And that was the end of the rehearsal that night, because we were doing 2 or 3 rehearsals a day, one in the afternoon, one early evening, and one later that night.
So that tour you were doing monitors, right?
Yeah, I still was
Yeah.
on the monitor console.
Were you amazed at the side of the stage every night you see the gymnastics with him, with the splits, and just
He'd run right past me to go in the quick change booth, and then by that time, we had played many games of basketball together. In between rehearsals, everybody stop on the one, stop. Who wants to play basketball? Everybody'd raise their hands. We'd play basketball. So during all of that, you'd see a little bit slightly different side. He was very athletic, very good basketball player, but there we were rubbing up next to each other, and he was kind of a rough, I don't want to say rough player, or dirty player, but he was certainly far more agile than any one of us and much more athletic. So, and he knew how to play basketball. And so that's when we were starting to, rub shoulders, and he'd go, "That's it. That's all you have." I went, "Wait, whoa, what? Really? Okay." And I knew that, out of all due respect for him, everybody else in the band. We just had to be careful. But
Yeah.
no, it was just so great. It it never felt like work. It was always just such a great experience. And at the time, I don't, I'll speak for myself, but I just didn't realize like how much of an impact this would make on me for the rest of my life. But then I learned through his uh, ability to never really bring anybody down. It was all a matter of being able to keep up with what he was doing, what he needed. It was Prince. It was his band, his music. He was the conductor. It was very obvious as to what we all needed to do to contribute to his ability, not just to be happy, but that success that he saw far greater than any one of us knew where this was going. And so I'm just so grateful for all of that experience. And then that tour was huge.
Oh yeah.
It was a global world front page, everywhere we went, multiple 6, 7 nights, every city, and then returning for another 6, 7 nights.
Yeah. I saw like 4 shows at Nassau Coliseum in New York and Philly, and I never slept out for anybody for tickets. And I was 11 at night before tickets went on sale at Nassau Coliseum. That was dangerous with the fans, the bedlam and breaking windows, mounted police officers, and we wound up with seats behind the stage.
Yeah, yeah.
So
So,
yeah, it was crazy.
for us, again, we didn't know any of that was going on. At least I didn't. This is the first
Right.
time I ever heard that,
Yeah.
because we would just get in bus, get to where we needed to go next, and it was just set it up and get it right. And he would come in and know that it would be right. He knew. And it was always, there's some bit of music. There was a lot of music all the time, but then there was choreography. And in his mind, he's thinking costumes or wardrobe and changes and this and that. So I had my job. I stayed in that lane. That was it. And I mean, there's a lot more to that story, but I'll wait for questions. But I'll just,
Right.
there's, and then how I made my way at, front of house at some point. It happened, and I couldn't wait for that opportunity, because at that point now I am the guy at rehearsals all the time. I am the only audio person there. I'm mixing monitors in front of house, and 4 feet from him and his pedal board, he's looking at me, I'm looking at him and the band behind him. So that was us for all of Controversy, Warehouse Rehearsal, all of, all of any of the other rehearsals prior to the end of the other tours before we got into Paisley Park. So there was always this great camaraderie where we had unspoken terms. It,
Right.
it, I knew what he needed. And if he didn't need to ask me for anything, I knew at the end of the day, everything was good. And if he
So,
needed something, if I
mhm.
happened to be that person that could help him, or even if it wasn't my department, we were comfortable with each other that he could, you know, talk to me.
So before you became front of house engineer, you were involved with a couple tracks off Around the World in a Day, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's so much of this that just happens so quickly. And
Mhm.
all of the live recordings, all of the music that we did at rehearsal, all of the bits and pieces, the videos that we made, all of that was happening all within the times of either on the tour, um, or at production rehearsals. I'd show up in the morning and there'd be a whole film crew, or there'd be a
Right.
recording truck. And these were decisions that were made by him probably late that night prior to us coming in the next morning. So I just, it was everything for me just to keep in my lane, dialed in, knowing what to expect and what to anticipate. More,
Okay. Mhm.
that became a big part. I think for every one of us in all of our departments, it was the anticipation of what could he be looking for next, and if we could get there, never before him, but just in order to be prepared and be able to expedite whatever he needed to have done, and never be, I want to say this, never trying to go, are you ready? And say, yes, I am. And know that you're not, would be the way
Mhm.
that you would find your way out the door. Is
Oh, okay.
all
Yeah.
the times that he would say rehearsal at 10, if he got there early and somebody was restringing a guitar and I happened to be the person there, and you go, you ready? And I went, we're not ready till 10 yet, till 10. But if I would have said yes, and then somebody gave him the wrong equipment is up and on, then it would be like, why are we wasting our time?
Yeah.
He may say that, but you could certainly tell if he wasn't happy, he might quickly move on to something else. But that was a great way of communicating and letting him know that we were also there to make sure that we were be ready at 10. 10, okay, at 10,
Right.
come and get me. I'll be in my car. 10 o'clock, tap on the window, ready to go. Come in, everything's ready to go.
It's a great history lesson.
Yeah, it is all a history lesson, isn't it? It's just a phenomenal time. And then, moving on from there into Sign of the Times and it, just everything in between. And that's when I got to go to front of house. And I mean, it's all started happening during Purple Rain, where he was just not happy and came to my hotel and room and knocked on my door at 10 o'clock at night and had his finger over the eye hole. I didn't know who it was. My door, there's Prince. And he goes, I want you to go to front of house. And no, Prince, let's not do that. We got about a dozen shows left, and
This was during what tour?
Purple Rain.
Oh, Purple
Yeah,
Rain. Okay. Yeah.
yeah. And so there just was some things that just weren't quite right. And um, why? And I said, you'd just be unhappy on stage. So I mean, already by that time, I was doing monitors and during sound check, run to front of house and try to help out what they needed help with out there. And but eventually, once that tour ended and we got back, and now I'm working for him full time at Paisley, that's when I could zero in on starting doing even what I was doing normally at rehearsals, but moving
Mhm.
towards front of house. And it was just the right thing, right step to do at that time. He had the confidence. And that's where I had originally come from, as being a front of house mixer in the first place. But he didn't know that. He was just comfortable with me being in that position. So it all worked out. It all worked out for all the right reasons. And so that was, took it all the way to 1989. I think I did 6, 7 major projects, major tours,
Mhm.
and then all the other stuff that in between. So a lot of music, a lot of time.
So for the Prince template, when you're mixing the front of house, what are the keys that you have to get perfectly? I'm sure it all has to be right, but that you can't screw up it, or it would be noticeable to him and to the crowd. Something's out of whack.
Well, I, I just really tried to duplicate how the recordings were done, and then stay with the intensity of the performance. Uh,
Okay.
we all got a real good taste of what that was going to be when we were doing band rehearsals, and then got into production rehearsals. If things changed, any kind of instrumental change, timing change, any of that, he would call out, and we just had to be ready and know what to do. I was very familiar I with the music by now. I was
Mhm.
very familiar with the early stuff, and now I'm working for him full time. I've moved back to Minneapolis. He moved me back. They put me up in a hotel along with the rest of Wendy and Lisa and the people that didn't live here. We lived in Residence Inn for 6, 7 months
Right.
until I bought a home, until, so on and so forth. That's just what we did. But you you just had to be prepared. I knew that he wanted good, clean sound. I just knew what he was looking for was very similar to what I would want myself. Um, Punchy, you know, great R&B, funky, uh, great instrumentation, very clean, great vocals. And he was just such an incredible guitar player that never let up on continuing to get better and better and better. So the emphasis was on the music mix and musical and being prepared, always having paper and pencil, because things would fly at you. You needed to write things down. You needed to remember what earlier part of the day was, you know, part was for you to remember what you had to get better at. Even if it wasn't him telling you,
Mhm.
I believe that he realized in all of us that he could trust us to find out on our own, to figure it out on our own. We weren't often criticized for doing something wrong, and unless it was very obvious. And hey, you need to work on this. You need to practice on this, and that all, in my world of mixing, there was all of that going on with the musicianship. But then he wasn't. He's an engineer. He's a console operator. I just delivered what I thought was the best rendition of my envision of Prince, and I learned along the way what was most important. It was the music mix and clean quality, not bright. We had those conversations of what it took to make it sound very good in these cavernous buildings,
Mm.
where the acoustics weren't very friendly. I just never let that become an issue for me. I always felt like I needed to beat that room. I needed to not let the room bring me down. Walking in the morning, knowing this is going to be difficult. No, this was going to be a challenge. And once we get all the people in here, it's going to be great. He's going to have a great performance. That was what mattered the most. And I believe that he realized and felt that too from us.
And you did the Act One tour as well, right?
Yeah, act one and
Yeah.
act. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I saw the two shows at Radio City Music Hall. Those were fantastic. Yeah.
yeah, I'll never forget any of that. That was my introduction to Lenny Kravitz, and they were sitting on the stage, and I was walking back from front of house, and he brought me over because Lenny was sitting out at front of house with me and must have liked it and mentioned it to Prince, and so there was just always a little bit of a nice banter,
Right.
very professional, very polite. I felt that way around him all the time, unless he was in a very kidding mood. And I could tell, he was a little pokey that day, and I could be
Uh-huh.
pokey too. And it was great.
Yeah. Um, for something that hasn't been released, anything come to your mind that you would love to see made right, and somehow we all could see the light of day of that you worked on tour
Well,
wise?
I have to say that, Sign of the Times for me was probably one of my most favorite tours. And to know that that never played in North America till just recently now that it's
Right.
on that. So for me, all along, I felt like Europe got that taste of what went beyond Purple Rain, and a combination of, now he has a slightly different band, just the whole raw emotion of what he was feeling and doing at that time. And mind you, we went back into Minneapolis and loaded everything in where we were rehearsing, and he just basically left and went to France and made that record while we sat and waited for him to come back.
Wow.
And band would rehearse,
Yeah.
and then we got the call, let's get the gear, bring it over there. And that's what we did. And we started Sign of the Times tour over there at Biersea. And exactly, you see you shaking your head, and I'm going,
Yeah.
okay, none of us had that time to go, what are we
Yeah.
doing? No, it was there, go.
Right.
This is we're doing another tour. This is it.
Mhm.
There's buses, there's trucks. We're here. We have a full on PA. full on lighting. At my time, it was just the PA, and and it was just such a phenomenal tour. It was just such a different taste of his music and the band. Sheila now, and every one of his bands have been just phenomenal, as you know.
You're
And
right.
he's been so fortunate to have such great players, and the players being so fortunate to have Prince ask them aboard and be part of this whole entourage of wonderful music and another tour that's we're going to go around the world with them on. And by now, the machine is very well oiled. The office is in place. All of the great office staff, everybody in production, all of these really hardworking people that knew exactly what to do and how to make this happen. Now we were off and we were running. So it's no surprise to me that we were able to do the things that we did.
And you still keep in contact with your colleagues from that time and friends?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
As many of them that are around here and many that are still will have basically not touring anymore, but we're touring up till 20 years ago. I feel like I went well beyond my time period, but I just really have enjoyed it and had great artists to work with. So I just kept my phone would ring and I'd go, and basically I just latched onto a lot of very good artists for long periods of time. I
Have
never
you
really.
been back to Paisley Park since Prince's passing?
Oh yes, oh yeah. I
Uh-huh.
did several of the ceremony things in the very early days. I got in there, brought in to do some archiving stuff several different times. I've taken some of the old staff over there and got permission along with their person that would take us through. But we'd had some private showings. Some of the artists I've toured with, but it was all, it's certainly quite different than what I remember it when it was in full on Prince mode. But nonetheless, yeah, it's pretty. The first time I went in, it was a very, very emotional moment for me in the atrium. Yeah, no doubt about it. Yeah,
Right.
and
So those archives, the vault, how, some of them still in good shape and some not so good shape, right?
well, I mean, downstairs next to the vault was our tech room. So I
Okay.
really didn't have much to do with the recording side of things. That was Susan, and that was the night staff, right?
Right.
Uh, I knew where I could only do this much. This is what I knew. And somehow I drew the line in the sand. I don't ever remember doing anything like that, but I think it was just common sense that he would know that I'm good for this part. The others were good for that part. We
Right.
all had a position, we all had a lane to stay in. But so my affiliation with the vault was the tech room downstairs. When we needed something, when we needed something fixed, we had a tech there. We had a lot of storage there. Um, I was a big part of the wiring of which is now Studio B, that
Okay.
was put in his home originally. I did all that panel wiring there, spent hours and hours and hours in the house. Great stories there where he would come home unannounced and I'd be downstairs and soldering. And we won't get into that, but just, I got caught in the pantry eating his Doritos and,
Yeah,
you
that's
know,
right. That's a no-no, right?
well, I mean, don't come downstairs with a bag of Doritos then and put them in my face when I'm hungry and then disappear for another week. I'm going to be
Right.
curious what the Doritos are. So, I opened up a bag of Doritos and I got called to the principal's office the next day. But I think at
Yeah.
that point, there was enough trust. I had a key to the house, let
Mhm.
myself in the back door. You know, what are those footprints? What are those? Those are deer prints. Those are, you have deer in the backyard. I do. Oh, so I ended up putting bales of alfalfa way out in the big lot out in the back, so the deer would be able to feed and not come up towards the house, and
Right.
just things like that. I mean, you just do things that at the time where it made sense to you, but maybe to him, I don't know why he would be doing that, but
Mhm.
it's okay because, you know, I trust the guy.
Yeah, and great music was created, so and you're a big
Yeah.
part of it, and the live shows as well. I wanted to ask you, moving on to other, huge artists you've worked with, Genesis and Phil Collins, and my buddy I'm gonna point my buddy from Minneapolis, David Anania. I don't know if you know David Anania from Greasy Meal. Huge He's a drummer with, and
Yeah.
he's a huge Phil Collins fan, so I'm curious to know about your experience with Phil and Genesis.
Well, Phil came to the Love Sexy tour. So now I'm 8, 9 years into Prince, but Phil had been to other shows. And it was the very end of Love Sexy in Tokyo at the Tokyo Dome. We were doing 2 nights in a very difficult room. Can't hang PA, you can only stack it. And so I'd missed the end of tour party because I was there setting up PA and getting everything that we had interfaced with the extra gear that we needed, that was brought in from the Japanese side of Electro Voice. And so uh, we do the shows. And after the first night, I remember the show ending. It was a phenomenal show. It sounded great in the venue. We were all very happy, and the show ended. And I kind of felt like maybe it might be time. And Prince and I hadn't really. Everything was good, but it turns out that my systems guy at that time, when the show ended, he goes, "Phil Collins wants to meet you," and I said, "Ha, that's not funny, but that's funny, you know."
Yeah.
No, he's right there. And I turned around, there's Phil Collins. And apparently, well, during the show, he got my phone number from Bill, the system engineer, and waited for me to finish. And so I walked over, we exchanged, you know, nice to meet you. I have your phone number here, Cubby. I'm going to give you a call, or my manager will. I'd like you to do my next tour. And
Wow.
I thought, wow, very
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
And so again, the changing of the people, the changing of the atmosphere in the Prince world, it might be that time. So uh, I went back to my hotel room that night, and the shows get over with really early there in Japan because of the transit system and so on and so forth. And my phone rang, and it was Prince going, "Congratulations! I heard Phil Collins liked the show," and so on and so forth. And I thanked Prince a lot. I did the following show. I went home, and I went on. I didn't go do Phil Collins right away. I went and did The Cure because
Oh,
there was
yeah.
thing happening with Prince. And I thought I was, at this point, I'm going to go and become independent now on my own.
Okay.
And that's what I did. And then right after The Cure, which was one of the greatest tours I've ever done, besides Prince and Phil and Genesis, I went and did that with Roy Bennett, actually. Roy asked me, he said, "Let's go do The Cure together." So Roy had that already in his pocket. Excuse me. So I met Phil and Tony Smith out in LA. They flew me out, and just because they were always a year ahead of time. Like Phil had to put out the But Serious record, and what a well-oiled machine that was. So I accepted the gig, and then, but I based it on that I really wanted to take the PA company with me that I was with, because that's where Phil had heard me mixing on it. And they
Right.
went, "No, that's not going to be possible because we're 51% owners in Shoko Variolite." So
Oh,
now I'm introduced to this enormous Prism system, which is what I ended up going out with on Phil and Genesis for the next 15, 18 years, and just fell in love with that new technology. And so the Phil, great musician, always introduces me to all these new musicians that are just phenomenal. The Nathan East, the Ricky Lawson, Chester Thompsons, Daryl Sturmers, Amy Keys, Brad Coles, the horn sections. you know it was it was just phenomenal.
mhm.
So Phil leads into Genesis, and back to Phil, and back to Genesis. I just ping ponged back and forth between that and then Tarzan movie. And then he took the long break, and and I went off on another tangent of, I did, I think, a lot of Janet stuff at that time and some Bob Seger, some Latin stuff with a really amazing artist, Juanes, kind of like the Bruce Springsteen of Latin America. And
From
then,
Colombia, right? He's
yeah,
originally, yeah, yeah.
just phenomenal band, phenomenal songwriter. Now the gear is changing. We're into line arrays, we're into digital consoles. In the meantime, I had been mixing the Grammys for many years. So throughout all my time of going through these award shows, passing through there with Prince and Sheila, did all of the family stuff, all of the Sheila stuff while being there with Prince, all
Mhm.
of the extra projects that he had. So it was just, can you imagine? I mean, I don't often think about it. And now that I'm talking to you about it, I'm thinking about like, wow, where did all of that was all part of that melting pot with Prince into the Phil and Genesis, and then stadiums with the Genesis, and, just a whole different passage of transportation. Now I'm traveling more or less with the artist because that's what they wanted. That's what they expected. That's what was in the past.
Mhm.
For me, that's not what was normal to me. But hey, I guess I earned it. So um, it was just it was always about the music though, and keeping that part of it in my focus, and then just continue to learn about what is the best way. My approach really never changed. It was always about learning the new gear, being as prepared as I could be for any other tours I'd get asked to be on. And again, fortunately, I just spent long periods of time with certain artists. I didn't really have to bounce around too much.
Did you on the Grammys? Did you work with Patrice Rushen?
Yes.
Yeah,
I
she
was
was
the
on the show talking about that. Yeah,
Yeah, I was the front of house mixer. I was the music mixer. So I mean, this goes all the way back to when we had analog consoles, and if we had 10 bands, we had 5 consoles. I just passed through, the same console twice, and I had a recall guy that wrote everything down on paper. And then we eventually got into more of the recall desks, the Yamaha PM1Ds, and then advanced into the newer stuff. And then I was with an artist on a tour that just was very reluctant on me leaving during the tour, and even if it was going to be for a week. And so I just stayed with the artist, and I felt like that was the right thing to do. And so handed that baton over to some other mixers at the time that could do the Grammys, and then eventually went back and forth. And so
how
it's all,
did the Shania Twain gig come about?
that was through another residency that I had done for 4 years. And so now
Okay,
I'm in residency mode because
right.
I finished a very long, grueling tour. I turned 60, and I came home and I said, I need a residency gig. 2 days later, God willing, my phone rang and said, can you come out and, and rescue this start of this major thing,
Mhm.
major artist? And I went out there, and um, I did a good enough, I stayed on. I had 10 days till opening night and nailed it. And it was a great PA, great venue, everything I could have asked for. The band was phenomenal. The production was top notch, A+ with, it was Baz Helpham design. The band was great. So that lasted, I did all 250 shows of that, and that went right into Shania, because now she's going to go into the same venue and do a residency. And her band had come to a lot of shows there that I'd been doing. And so it kind of just, hey, why don't we let's get Cubby. I got to know
Right.
Corey and a few of the other Shania band members, and during the course of visiting the show. And so I kind of felt like that might be a good fit for me at that time. So now I'm 70, and I did 10 years of the residency stuff.
Wow. My friend used to play drums with Shania, but I don't think he was there for the Vegas. JD Blair was probably another drummer.
Yeah, I know that name.
Yeah, he played with Victor Wooten and Shania, and then Shania changed
Yeah,
band members. So yeah, but he's
yeah,
still going strong, doing his thing.
yeah. Even during the course of the residencies, there was different bass players, drummers that came in, and
Oh,
even
okay.
I didn't. I said no to the tour, and at the end of all of that, which was a year or two ago, and when the residency ended, and they were going to do a 90-date tour, I know that wasn't for me anymore, and I thought that was basically going to be it for me then. And sure enough, I get a call from the PA company, Tom Arco at Claire Global, Eighth Day Claire Global, and you're going to get a call. Can you maybe go out and help out? Because I'd done the residencies, but I'd said no to the tour. They brought somebody else in. Long and short of it is he needed to go home for whatever the reason. So I came out and did 2 or 3 shows, and then they convinced me to stay on for another 7 months. So that was not my intention, but it was great. The band was great. All the everything about it, the accommodations, everything was very good, very comfortable. Good. Again, it was like, well, okay, might as well just hang here for till the end of this, and
Right.
it was the right choice. And then through that management, there was the John Batiste stuff that came in that kind of trickled in between the
Mhm.
residency time offs. We'd always have 3, 4, or 5 weeks off. Great. It was just the residency thing was was a good fit for me at that point in my career, as
Right.
I really was done with the bus and or traveling and flying all the time. So um,
Yeah, I fly out once a year to Vegas to visit my dad who lives out there, and it takes me a couple weeks now just to recover because we're up in Saratoga Springs, New York. So it's
right.
yeah, I mean yours is more demanding than but I can imagine.
it it's really
Yeah.
about the pace. For me, I just figured that I knew how to pace myself. Now that I'm older and everything is settled, and I'm very comfortable where I am, and surrounded by all these great players and
Mhm.
great music, and a great counsel, and loving what I'm still doing. Why not just hang with that? And now that I'm doing this with my own, Cubtone Soundworks, is I look at this and go, man, I could have started this 45 years ago and been, I'm just as much in love with this now as I was with all my live stuff, and it could
Mhm.
have easily been vice versa.
Right.
So
So
great.
people we'll have the links, but cuptonesoundworks.com, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's all one
Right.
word. Cubtone
Okay.
Soundworks.
Yeah.
So
We only scratch probably 2% of your whole career. I mean, you're just amazed at all the conversation and I learned a lot of things. And you know what comes to mind, something you said about Prince. This Prince fans would be interested. At least I took it like Phil Collins was basically taking you away from his employ, or you decided, and Prince seemed like he was like, congratulations. And
that's just who he was.
yeah, yeah.
That's just who it was for the better of everybody,
Mhm.
And I saw Prince again. I went back and did when he had the setup at the Rio in Vegas.
Yeah,
I got
yeah.
called to go put that system in and up there. So we saw each other again. I did several one-off shows with them in outdoor festival shows with them, major shows, and it was just a very good, what would the consideration, the confidence, the trust, and I believe he just really understood that I realized how much I benefited by being with him all of that time, how much I learned. And being a teacher like that, you have to think that your students, you know here's your student, he went off and did something with what he's gotten so much from me,
Right.
even though we never talked about it. And we
Mm.
didn't have to talk about it. It was just a really good trust value. And I believe that that is what is valued most in of all of our relationships with anybody. So I'll never forget when Phaedra called me near the very, very end of his time, Prince being here, hey, I can't, Phaedra, I can't get out of this. I'm in a contract. Yeah, but it's going to be like a rest. I know, but, and I went to the rehearsals with the, the Third Eye band,
Third
right?
Eye Girl. Yeah. Yeah.
And, we still tried to get together, but I couldn't break a contract. And it came down to an email where it was like, he just trusts you. So can you do it? And unfortunately I couldn't, because I couldn't break a contract that I had signed. And so the whole vibe of the trust was a really important part for me. And I yeah, I just really feel the most fortunate human being on the planet to have been able to spend as much time around him as I did, on tours, in rehearsal, at movies, at birthday parties we had for him, you know,
On the basketball court, throwing
on
elbows and talking trash.
all of that,
Yeah.
just every bit of that, every little bit of every one of those little nuances. I remember so much of all of that, all the award shows, just everything. The just fantastic.
Well, I got to thank you, Cubby Colby, for sharing a little bit of, things. I always saw your name, and now I know more of the background, and it's such interest. I know our viewers and listening audience will be thrilled to hear all this from you. So you're welcome back anytime, because
It's
I got a
it's
lot more questions.
it's really my pleasure, Joe, because this is our responsibility now to continue. I feel this way. The relevance of Prince's music, the whole idea of this man's ability to be the conductor that he was, to bring the musicianship together that he did, everybody, all of the plethora of all of the different people around the world, and and it was so inclusive, and it never felt divided. In the world that we're in,
Mhm.
it's just so it is the most refreshing thing for me to be able to reminisce about that and know that I really do believe that that's always the way that he wanted it to be. And I'm just grateful. And so being able to do this with you is it's great, and it's an honor. And I absolutely will enjoy, anything else I can do to be of help to keep geniuses, this genius and his artistry going forever.
All right. Well said. Thank you, Cubby.
You bet.
All
Thanks.
right. You take care.